There's a mistake people make when trying to change their lives. They think they have to become more powerful. They have to develop confidence. They have to become disciplined. They have to become courageous. They have to become motivated. They have to somehow construct a stronger version of themselves. And maybe some of that is true, but I think there's another way of looking at it. Maybe personal power isn't always something you have to create. Maybe you have to learn how to make yourself available to it. Because there have probably already been times in your life when you felt powerful. Times you weren't thinking about whether you were powerful. You were just living that way in the moment. And if you look carefully at your life, you may discover something. A lot of what happened afterward hasn't been that you lost your power. You've accumulated things that separate you from it. Habits, people, environments, expectations, fears, comforts, responsibilities, ideas about yourself, ideas other people have given you about yourself. And eventually there can be so much piled on top of you that you begin believing the person underneath all of that doesn't exist anymore. So maybe the work isn't always about adding. Maybe sometimes the work is about subtracting. Maybe some of it is walking away. Maybe some of it is exploration. And maybe some of it is refamiliarization. Refamiliarizing yourself with the things that once made you feel powerful. Especially the things that made you feel powerful as a child. Think about yourself before you had all these explanations for yourself. Before you knew what you were supposed to be good at. Before you had a resume. Before you had a reputation to uphold. Before you had years of successes and failures as evidence for what you supposedly could and couldn't do. What did you do? What fascinated you? Where did you go? What made you feel capable? Maybe you climbed trees. Maybe you ran everywhere. Maybe you rode your bicycle to the edges of the city or further. Maybe you built things. Maybe you drew. Maybe you explored the woods near your home. Maybe you fought. Maybe you wrestled. Maybe you danced. Maybe you made up stories. Maybe you took things apart just to figure out how they worked. Maybe you disappeared outside for hours and came home when it got dark. Whatever it was, think about the relationship you had with those things. You probably weren't standing there thinking, I am currently engaged in personal development practice designed to increase my sense of agency. You just did it. You saw a tree. You wanted to know if you could climb it, so you climbed it. You saw a creek. You wanted to know what was on the other side, so you figured out how to get across. You wanted to build something, so you started gathering things and putting them together. You weren't necessarily good at it, and that wasn't the point. You were interacting directly with the world. Can I do this? Let's find out. That question is enormously powerful. And somewhere along the way, many of us adults replace it with a completely different question. What if I can't? And that's a very different way of moving through the world. As children, we frequently discover ourselves through action. Then we get older and start defining ourselves through description. I'm this kind of person. I'm not that kind of person. Ooh, I'm good at this. I've never been good at that, though. People like me don't do those things. I'm too old. I'm too inexperienced. I don't have the right personality for that. I don't have enough money for that. I don't know anybody. I've never done that before. Eventually, the description becomes so elaborate that you barely have room to move inside it. You've created an identity. And now everything has to be checked against that identity before you're allowed to take action. But personal power doesn't necessarily care about the story you've constructed for yourself. It appears in action. You encounter something, you respond. You adapt. You learn. You become more capable through the encounter. That's why making yourself available to personal power will probably require doing away with some things. There are things in your life that make you weaker. That's just the reality. And I'm not necessarily talking about physically weak. I mean things that reduce your ability to act. Things that make you hesitant. Things that consume your attention. Things that keep you continually reacting instead of choosing. Things that leave you exhausted without having accomplished anything meaningful. Things that keep you thinking about yourself instead of interacting with the world. You have to be willing to examine these things. Not everything that is familiar to you is good for you. Not everything that comforts you strengthens you. And not everything that you've carried for a long time deserves to continue traveling with you. Sometimes making yourself available to power means putting something down. It may also mean going away from some things. That's different from simply eliminating them. Sometimes you need distance. Distance changes perception. There are environments where you have been one particular person for so long that everyone around you expects that person to continue existing. And without anyone consciously intending it, the environment keeps recreating the same version of you. Same conversations, same problems, same expectations, same responses, same places, same routines, same identity. Then you leave, maybe only temporarily, and suddenly something changes. Nobody knows who you're supposed to be. Nobody is waiting for your familiar responses. You're somewhere you've never been. You have a problem you've never encountered. And you have to deal with what's actually happening. That can be extraordinarily freeing because now you're not performing your identity. You're responding to reality. This is one reason exploration matters. You should explore new things. Not necessarily because you're looking for your next hobby. Explore because unfamiliarity demands something from you. Go somewhere you've never gone. Learn something you've never learned. Try something you've never tried. Talk to somebody you ordinarily wouldn't talk to. Use your hands. Use your body. Make something. Walk somewhere without knowing exactly what you're going to find. Attempt something you're not sure you can do. because new experiences don't have all your old stories attached to them. You haven't already decided who you are in relation to them. That gives you an opportunity to encounter yourself differently. And maybe you'll discover something you're terrible at, and that's good. Now you're a beginner. There's power in being a beginner, because beginners are allowed to discover. They don't have a reputation to protect. They don't have mastery to perform. They have a problem in front of them, and they have to start figuring it out. That relationship with the world is valuable. But alongside exploring new things, I think we should do something that almost sounds like it's opposite. We should refamiliarize ourselves with old things, especially things from childhood. I don't mean trying to become a child again, and I don't mean sitting around reminiscing about how wonderful things used to be. I'm talking about identifying the experiences through which you originally discovered your own agency. What made you feel powerful? And I don't immediately translate powerful into domination, status, money, or authority. A child can feel tremendously powerful standing on top of a rock they finally managed to climb. Why? Because 10 minutes earlier, they're standing at the bottom, looking up and wondering if they could get up there. And they figured it out. And that's power. You affected reality through your own efforts. Maybe you remember the first time you rode a bicycle without somebody holding on. For a moment, the world got bigger. Now you could go somewhere. Maybe you built a fort. It wasn't objectively impressive. It didn't increase the value of anybody's property, and nobody gave you an award, but you looked at this pile of junk and you turned it into a place. And that's power. Maybe you ran and you loved how fast you felt. Maybe you climbed. Maybe you were a swimmer. Maybe you drew entire planets on paper. Maybe you wandered around. Maybe you read constantly because books gave you access to places and ideas you couldn't reach otherwise. Maybe you took broken things apart. Maybe you helped animals. Maybe you planted things and watched them grow. Whatever it was, there was probably something underneath the activity itself. Something about it taught you that I can interact with this world. I can affect things. I can learn. I can move. I can create. I can endure. I can figure things out. That is what you're looking for. And when you find it, don't just think about it. Do it. This is important. You don't need to sit around analyzing the child you once were. Go interact with the thing again. If you loved being in the woods, go to the woods. If you loved drawing, get some paper and draw something. If you loved running, run. If you loved building things, build something. If you loved climbing, find something appropriate to climb. If you loved martial arts, go train. If you loved exploring, pick somewhere you've never been and go see what's there. Don't demand that the experience recreate your childhood, because it won't. You're different now. The world is different now. And that's not the point. You're not trying to reproduce an old feeling. You're refamiliarizing yourself with a way of engaging with life. And there is a big difference, because the adult who returns to that activity isn't the child who left it. You've accumulated decades of experience. You've survived things that child knew nothing about. You've learned things. You've failed. You've succeeded. You've lost people. You've gained people. You've been hurt. You've recovered. You've discovered limitations. You've discovered abilities. Now you're bringing that all back into contact with something fundamental. I wouldn't call that regression. I would call it integration. And you may discover that some of the things you abandoned were never really childish to begin with. They were simply things adults stopped giving themselves permissions to do. Exploration isn't childish. Play isn't childish. Curiosity isn't childish. Physical experimentation isn't childish. Making things simply because you want to see whether you can make them isn't childish. Wonder isn't childish. Adventure isn't childish. Adults frequently sacrifice these things in exchange for predictability and then wonder why they feel powerless. Your life becomes something that happens according to schedules somebody else has designed. Wake up, go there, do this, answer that, pay this, handle that, watch something, go to sleep, repeat. You can become extraordinarily competent at maintaining a life that doesn't make you feel particularly alive. And then someone tells you, you just need motivation. Maybe you don't. Maybe you need contact. Contact with something that requires you to actually show up. Personal power doesn't have to feel dramatic. It doesn't necessarily feel like standing on a mountain screaming at the sky. Sometimes it's extremely quiet. You decide you're going somewhere and you go. You decide you're going to learn something new and you learn it. Something goes wrong, you figure it out. You discover you're afraid and you act appropriately anyway. You realize something is diminishing you and you leave it behind. You discover something makes you stronger. You make room for it. You don't need anybody to applaud you. You don't need anybody to understand. You don't even need to continually tell yourself that you're becoming more powerful. Because eventually, the evidence is in the way you live. And I think that's the part that matters. With practice, there is no argument. You don't have to convince yourself you're capable if you're continually doing capable things. You don't have to manufacture an identity around courage if you repeatedly move when you're afraid. You don't have to tell yourself you're adaptable if you continually put yourself into situations that require adaptation. The action settles the argument. So if you feel disconnected from your personal power, don't immediately ask, what do I need to add to myself? Ask some different questions. What needs to go? What do I need some distance from? What haven't I explored? And what once made me feel powerful that I need to become familiar with again? And then act on those answers. Get rid of something. Go somewhere. Try something new. Return to something. Not all at once. You don't have to transform your entire life this afternoon, but you do need movement. because this isn't something you're going to think your way into. Personal power is encountered through participation. And maybe that's the central idea. You don't command personal power to appear. You arrange your life so that you can encounter it. You remove some things, you leave some things, you explore new things, you refamiliarize yourself with old things. You put yourself into direct contact with the world, and gradually you discover that the person you thought you needed to create was never entirely absent. There were too many things standing between you and that person. So don't spend your entire life trying to manufacture a powerful identity. Make yourself available to power. Then go do something that requires it.